Hi, this is Tyler O'Neill, managing editor at the Daily Signal. I'm joined by former presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard, great American.
Thank you.
And just thank you so much for being with us. And
Thank you. It's good to join you today.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk to you. You recently, officially left the Democratic Party after running for president as a Democrat. What led you to make that momentous decision?
Unfortunately, the Democratic Party of today is there are a lot that's going wrong with the Democratic Party leadership. The foremost of which is they are controlled by this elite cabal of warmongers. They are intent on undermining our God-given rights and freedoms that are enshrined in the Constitution and Bill of Rights. They are rejecting the reality of objective truth and biology and trying to erase us as women as an entire category of people, undermining the rule of law. The list goes on, unfortunately, but ultimately it comes down to a party that is wildly out of touch with the people of this country, with the Democratic Party that I joined 20 years ago, and is instead a party that has led us to the brink of nuclear war and is undermining the freedoms that make us who we are as a country and that are intrinsic to who we are as people.
Yeah, and undermining those freedoms. I think we've seen with the Twitter files, the way that the government is working with big tech to engage in censorship. Most recently, what was shocking to me, I wrote a book called Making Hate Pay, The Corruption of the Southern Poverty Law Center, and to see the FBI cite the Southern Poverty Law Center in a document warning against radical traditional Catholics. What did you think when you saw that?
This just points to how dangerous it is when we have the weaponization of institutions and agencies within our federal government who exist for the purpose of serving the people, but are being weaponized against the very people they're supposed to be serving, all to advance political ambitions and goals. And this is what's dangerous about what we're seeing here. I testified recently before the Select Subcommittee in the House of Representatives on this very topic, speaking to how this directly undermines our democracy, how it directly undermines the people's faith and trust in the rule of law in these institutions. And once we lose that, then we start looking a hell of a lot more like a banana republic than a democratic republic.
Yeah. And you recently returned from a trip to East Palestine, Ohio, and saw just the destruction of the community there. Would you speak to what you saw and what you think of the Biden administration's response?
Well, first, I'll just speak to the people who I met. I spent a couple of days out there and had the opportunity to listen to folks, to go in their homes and to be kind of brought around. They showed me their town. They showed me the place where they live, the incredible pride that they have in their little village there in Ohio, talking about how nobody knew who we were before this happened, and yet now that this absolute catastrophe has occurred, they wonder, where are our leaders? Why is it that they are having to beg and plead for help and assistance in this very moment? But also, who is going to be there for them in a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, as the consequences of the radical toxic exposure that they are dealing with start to bear fruit? It's important for us to stand up for our fellow Americans, whether they come from big cities or small towns, from blue states or red states. And it's unfortunate that in this position that these people are having to question are their political motives for why they've been left behind.
Yeah. What other abuses, you talked about the weaponization of the security state of the FBI, perhaps of the agencies like the CDC coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. What really stood out to you, and what would you call on the Biden administration to change?
Look, you can go through just about every federal agency at this point and cite different examples of how they are now being used for political purposes rather than the purpose that they exist, which is to serve all Americans. This comes down to the call to action here, yes, is to the Biden administration of stop abusing your power for your own political purposes, but really the call to action here is to the American people. If you're sick and tired of what we're seeing, we're the ones we're the we're really the only ones who can do something about it. Our Declaration of Independence, our Constitution, our Bill of Rights tells us directly we are a self-governed people. If we do not like the way that we are being governed, we have to take action, exercise our right to free speech, exercise our right to vote, and bring about the change. Fire the people who are abusing their power, who are serving only themselves, and elect people who are truly committed to the Constitution, who are passionate about waking up every day and taking on this incredible mission of serving the American people and putting the people's interests above their own.
Where do you see those people who are dedicated to those principles and to the American people today?
There are so many great Americans all across this country who are dedicated to the Constitution, who have a heart for service, who love this country and want to see us brought back on track.
Would you say that there's a rising, heterodox, almost independent movement that, maybe it's not Republican or Democrat where Americans should put their hope, but in something else?
I don't know that there's any fancy explanation or title for it other than the fact that I think a lot of folks, myself included, are sick and tired of corrupt politicians from both political parties who are working for their own selfish interests. We, the people, need a government that is of, by, and for the people, and in a lot of ways we haven't seen that for quite some time. That's what we've got to get back to, and we, the people, have to make it happen.
Yeah. Where do you see the hope for the people making it happen?
Each of us recognizing our own responsibility to do something about it. You see a problem, take action. Nothing will ever change if we keep electing the same people. Nothing will ever change if we stay home and we don't cast our vote. Nothing will ever change if we don't lift our voices and speak up for our freedoms and speak up for this country.
Yeah. And you spoke about the threat of gender ideology, the idea that, women don't deserve their own independent spaces, that men should be able to compete against women in women's sports, various things like that.
Well, that is insane on its face. Anyone who has any common sense recognizes the insanity of what is happening before our very eyes. There is a deeper problem that is rooted in, which is that when we have people in positions of power who deny that there is such a thing as objective truth, such as the biological difference between a male and a female, then we have a problem where you have people in power who then deem themselves as the arbiter of what is true and what is not. Mm-hmm. And we have no guardrails then in our society. We have no floor and no ceiling if there is no such thing as truth. And if the only truth that exists is whatever the people in power say it is. This points to the dangerous path of where this ideology leads us. It goes far beyond the trans ideology and the erasure of women that we're seeing in our society right now, and it should be concerning to everyone.
Why do you think people have adopted that idea, since it is so anti-truth and anti-biology?
Well, because they think they're God, and they think that they are the ones who get to determine what is true and what is not, and push whatever their own agenda and their narrative is. That's ultimately what it comes down to.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Thank you.
Where can the people follow you?
I'm on social media. You can follow me at Tulsi Gabbard everywhere, and see what I'm up to lately at tulsigabbard.com.
Perfect.
All right.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Good to see you.